The US has ordered an additional 1,000 troops to the Middle East amid an escalation in tensions with Iran. Washington says the forces are for defensive purposes to address threats in the region.
I have authorized approximately 1,000 additional troops for defensive purposes to address air, naval and ground-based threats in the Middle East. We have received credible intelligence on hostile behavior by Iranian forces and their proxy groups that threaten United States personnel and interests across the region.
Well, RT senior correspondent Murat Gazdeev joins me in the studio with more on this. Hi there, Murat. You never quite know where you are when it comes to American military presence. Donald Trump saying we want to take more people out of the Middle East. Now it seems they're putting more people in. They are stepping up their presence. Is that safe to say?
Well, they've been building up forces in the Middle East around Iran for a while now. We first saw strategic bombers being stationed there, Patriot anti-air missile systems, more and more troops. Just less than a month ago, 1,500 more troops were stationed in the Middle East over credible threats that pro-Iranian groups were imminently going to attack US personnel. Hasn't happened so far. We didn't see the evidence, but it was enough to justify sending more troops. This time, though, the United States is saying that showing photos and videos of what it says is evidence supporting its side of the story, that recent tanker attacks in the Gulf of Oman have been the work of Iran. That Iran is responsible, that Iran is a danger in the region. Iran has come out and said, this is all complete nonsense. You're just trying to sabotage democracy. You're trying to find an excuse for war. And at the end of the day, they said, if we wanted to shut down the Gulf, the Persian Gulf, and all the oil that flows through it, we'd just do it.
Regarding the new incidents in the Persian Gulf, if the Islamic Republic of Iran decides to block exports of oil through the Strait of Hormuz, it is military strong enough to do that fully and publicly.
Now, these accusations against Iran have been supported by the usual culprits, Iran's regional rivals, that is Israel and Saudi Arabia, along with the United States. But so far, no one else, no major players have gone along with the United States. They've found the evidence and what the United States is saying unconvincing. We're talking here about Russia, the European Union, China. They've all said that they don't see any reason to join in on America's crusade against Iran.
In terms of this troop build-up, it very rarely happens just that this is one stage, 1,000, and that's it. It tends to go in stages and more people join that, more soldiers join up. What's the international reaction been to this increase?
Well, as I said, there's a lot of, because there's been no real evidence offered. The United States first released a bunch of black and white blurry photos. Then they released some color photos showing an Iranian patrol boat near one of the damaged tankers, saying, this is evidence that Iran is behind the whole attack. And other countries have found this unconvincing.
Europe in particular.
Europe in particular, Russia, China, others, Iraq, for example. And they see the United States using these attacks to justify applying more pressure against Iran.
We call upon sober assessments and wait for some credible evidence to be presented. It's ridiculous to cite secret data in this case.
Already in the last days, we have called for the maximum restraint. The world cannot afford another crisis, especially in an area like that.
We call on all parties to remain rational and restrained, not to take any actions to provoke the escalation of tension in the region, and not to open a Pandora's box.
But it is interesting how critical Donald Trump was of Barack Obama, of his predecessors, and he still is for sending troops to the Middle East, for fighting in all the various conflicts in the Middle East. He's been a big proponent of bringing the troops home, and yet here we are, Donald Trump signing off on further troop buildups. Nevertheless, he still seems to be critical of what's happening, America's role in the Middle East.
I happen to think it was the worst decision made in the history of our country, going into the middle. It's like quicksand. It was a terrible decision, terrible.
And again, it is Donald Trump, so what he says and what he does may be two entirely different things. Nevertheless, whatever evidence he was shown by his advisors, by his military chiefs, must have convinced him, similarly to how it did with Syria.
I want to bring our troops back home. The place went crazy. They want to keep. You have people here in Washington. They never want to leave. Someday people will explain it.
Well, this is an example.
You do have a group, and they call it the military-industrial complex.
So there you go. Remains to be seen where the situation goes from here. But so far, it's just been escalation after escalation.